My name is Erica Watson. At 32 years old, I stood in a cold law office watching my sister inherit $15 million while I was left with nothing. I thought my life was over until the lawyer opened a secret file and read the 4 words that changed everything. The scent of stale lilies and hospital-grade antiseptic still clung to the curtains of our childhood home, despite my best efforts to scrub the place clean. My hands were raw, the skin around my knuckles cracked from 5 years of sponge baths, dishwater, and gripping the handles of Mom's wheelchair. I looked at my reflection in the hallway mirror. My blonde hair, once bright like Mom's, was pulled back in a messy, utilitarian nut. There were shadows under my eyes that no amount of sleep could fix. I looked like a woman who had spent half a decade watching the person she loved most slip away, one breath at a time. The front door slammed open, the sound echoing through the quiet house like a gunshot. "Erica? God, it smells like a nursing home in here." Chloe swept in, a whirlwind of black silk and expensive perfume. Her heels, red-bottomed Louboutins that probably cost more than my car, clicked sharply against the hardwood I'd hand-polished just yesterday. She didn't look tired. She looked like she'd just stepped off a plane from Manhattan, which she had. "The funeral ended 2 hours ago, Chloe. I thought you were going to help me sort through the kitchen." Chloe didn't look at me. She was busy checking her reflection in the same mirror I'd just used, adjusting her designer sunglasses on top of her perfectly coiffed head. "I had a lunch meeting with a decorator. Besides, what's there to sort? It's all junk, Erica. Old Tupperware and chipped plates. We should just hire a junk removal service and be done with it." "It's Mom's life," I whispered. "It's a burden," she snapped, finally looking at me. Her eyes were cold, devoid of the tears she'd squeezed out for the cameras at the graveside. Well, for me dealing with the bills anyway. I flinched. Chloe had sent money occasionally, stiff, formal wire transfers, but I was the one who stayed. I was the one who held Mom's hand when she forgot my name. I was the one who went into debt buying the specialized bed Mom needed when the insurance company balked. "I just want to make sure the medical debts are covered," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "The hospital sent another notice yesterday." Chloe waved a manicured hand dismissively. "Details, Erica. Let Mr. Sterling handle the boring stuff. I've already got a realtor coming by on Friday to appraise this lot. It's a prime location." "Appraise it? I still live here, Chloe." She gave me a thin, pitying smile, the kind you give a child who doesn't understand a math problem. "For now, honey, for now." She turned on her heel and walked out to her waiting town car, leaving the scent of her $400 perfume to battle the smell of the lilies. I stood in the silence, my heart thudding against my ribs, feeling a cold dread that had nothing to do with the winter air outside. The office of Sterling and Associates felt like a tomb. It was draped in heavy navy curtains and smelled of expensive leather and old, dusty paper. I sat in a stiff wingback chair, my hands tucked under my thighs to hide their shaking. Across from me, Chloe was vibrating with a different kind of energy. She was scrolling through her phone, her thumb moving a mile a minute. "Can we get this moving?" Chloe asked, not looking up. "I have a flight back to the city at 4. Mr. Sterling, a man who looked like he had been carved out of a piece of dry cedar, didn't look up from his spectacles. He carefully clicked open a fountain pen. The sound seemed to echo in the sterile room. "Patience, Miss Chloe," he murmured. "A will is a sacred final word. It deserves a moment of silence." He cleared his throat and began to read. He bypassed the usual legal jargon, getting straight to the heart of our mother's estate. I held my breath, praying for enough to just clear the $40,000 in credit card debt I'd racked up keeping the house running. Regarding the primary liquid assets, Mr. Sterling read, his voice monotone, including the life insurance policies and the recent settlement from the medical malpractice suit, the total sum of $15 million is to be distributed. I felt my jaw drop. $15 million? I knew Mom had been fighting a lawsuit against the pharmacy that mislabeled her meds, but I had no idea the payout had been that large. That money could change everything. It could mean I could finally go back to school, finally breathe. To my daughter, Chloe Watson, I leave the entirety of this investment portfolio and all cash assets, totaling $15 million. The air left my lungs. It felt like I'd been punched in the solar plexus. I turned to look at Chloe. She didn't look surprised. She looked triumphant. A slow, shark-like grin spread across her face. "And to Erica?" I whispered, my voice cracking. Mr. Sterling turned a page, his expression unreadable. "To my daughter, Erica Watson, I leave the contents of the old cedar chest located in the attic of the family home, along with my gratitude for her presence." "Gratitude?" I choked out. "I gave up 5 years of my life. I lost my career, my savings, everything to keep her out of a state facility." Chloe let out a sharp, mocking laugh as she stood up, smoothing her skirt. "Oh, Erica, don't be so dramatic. You were always the homemaker type. Mom clearly realized that I'm the one who knows how to manage real wealth. You get the dusty memories, and I get the life I deserve." She leaned over the desk, snatched the preliminary paperwork from Mr. Sterling, and turned to me. Her eyes were hard as flint. "I'm sending my contractor over tomorrow morning at 8. The house is part of the liquid assets since it's technically held by the estate portfolio I now own. I want you packed and out by then. I'm leveling the place to build luxury condos." "You're kicking me out of our childhood home?" I gasped. "With nothing but a chest of old clothes?" "Chloe made her choice, Erica. Maybe if you'd spent less time playing nurse and more time being a daughter she actually respected, you'd be holding a check right now. See ya." She swept out of the room, the scent of her victory lingering like a foul odor. I sat there, staring at the floor, feeling the walls of my life collapsing in on me. I had nothing, no home, no money, and a sister who was ready to bulldoze my mother's memory for a few more zeros in her bank account. The attic was freezing, the winter air seeping through the eaves of the old Victorian house. I climbed the pull-down ladder, my breath hitching in little white puffs. It was dark, illuminated only by a single bare light bulb that hummed with a low, irritating buzz. In the far corner, tucked under a layer of plastic sheets, sat the cedar chest. It was heavy, made of dark, aromatic wood with tarnished brass hinges. My grandfather had built it for Mom when she got married. As a child, I'd thought of it as a treasure chest. Now, it felt like a coffin for my future. I knelt in the dust, my knees protesting against the hard floor. "Is this really it, Mom?" I whispered, my voice thick. "A chest of old blankets while Chloe gets the world?" I unlatched the heavy lid. The scent of cedar exploded into the air, sharp, woody, and clean. Inside, it was exactly what I expected. Mom's wedding dress, yellowed with age, a few scrapbooks filled with blurry Polaroids, and a stack of moth-eaten wool sweaters. I dug through them, tears blurring my vision. It was a cruel joke. I was looking at a lifetime of memories that wouldn't pay a single utility bill. Frustrated, I shoved a heavy stack of quilts to the side. As I did, my hand hit the bottom of the chest with a dull thud. It didn't sound like solid wood. It sounded hollow. I frowned, wiping my eyes with the back of my hand. I cleared everything out, piling the clothes on the dusty floor until the cedar bottom was bare. I pressed my fingers into the corners, searching. In the back right corner, a small knot in the wood felt loose. I pushed it. With a soft click, a false bottom popped up about an inch. My heart began to race. I pried the board away, revealing a hidden compartment lined with velvet. Inside wasn't gold or jewelry. It was a thick, leather-bound diary and a stack of bank statements held together by a thick rubber band. I grabbed the bank statements first. My eyes scanned the numbers, and I felt the blood drain from my face. These weren't Mom's accounts. Well, they were, but there were names listed as authorized users. Chloe. Starting 5 years ago, the exact month I moved back home to care for Mom, massive withdrawals began. 10,000 here, 50,000 there. A loan for a New York penthouse for 200,000. I flipped through the pages, my hands shaking so hard the paper rattled. Chloe hadn't just been sending money to help, she had been systematically emptying Mom's savings while I was clipping coupons to buy Mom's heart medication. I opened the diary. The handwriting was shaky, the ink smudged in places as if by tears. October 14th, the first entry read. Chloe called today. She sounded so sweet, but then she asked for the password to the trust again. She thinks I don't notice the missing funds. She thinks I'm old and confused. But I see her, and I see Erica. I didn't sleep. I sat on the floor of the attic until the sun began to bleed a pale, sickly yellow through the grime-streaked windows. The diary sat in my lap like a lead weight. Every entry was a dagger. My mother had watched her youngest daughter strip her life's work away, cent by cent, while I had been downstairs making herbal tea and counting pennies for the heating bill. At exactly 8 a.m., a heavy truck rumbled into the driveway. Then came the sound I'd been dreading, the sharp, metallic clack-clack of Chloe's heels on the porch. I descended the attic ladder, the diary tucked firmly under my arm. When I opened the front door, Chloe wasn't alone. A man in a high-visibility vest stood behind her, holding a clipboard and a heavy-duty measuring tape. "Morning, Erica," Chloe chirped. She looked radiant, wearing a cream-colored coat that probably cost more than my car. "This is Mike. He's the lead on the demolition. Mike, this is my sister. She's just leaving." "I'm not leaving, Chloe," I said. My voice was low, vibrating with a cold fury I'd never felt before. Chloe rolled her eyes and stepped past me into the foyer, her nose wrinkling. "We've been over this. The paperwork is filed. I own the estate, which means I own this air you're breathing. Mike, start in the kitchen. I want to see how much of that load-bearing wall we can take out." "Wait," I said, stepping in front of the contractor. I held up the leather-bound book. "I found this in the attic, in the cedar chest Mom left me. Do you want to know what she wrote, Chloe? Do you want to know what she saw you doing to her bank accounts for the last 5 years?" Chloe's smile didn't just fade, it vanished, replaced with a mask of cold, sharp marble. She looked at the diary, then at me. For a second, a flicker of genuine panic crossed her eyes, but she smothered it instantly with a sneer. "I don't care about the ramblings of a dying woman on morphine, Erica," she hissed. She stepped closer, smelling of expensive lilies and malice. "Give me that book." "No, it's a record of the $148.8 million you stole from her. It's evidence." With a speed I didn't expect, Chloe lunged. She didn't go for me. She grabbed the diary. We scrambled for a moment, the sound of scuffling feet loud in the empty house. She was stronger than she looked, fueled by a desperate kind of greed. She ripped the book from my hands, the binding groaning. "This?" she laughed, holding it up. "This is trash." Before I could stop her, she strode over to the fireplace. I hadn't lit a fire in weeks, but the contractor had brought a small propane torch for some pipework. She snatched it from his belt, clicked it on with a hiss of blue flame, and held it to the corner of the diary. "No!" I screamed, reaching for her. The dry paper caught instantly. She tossed the burning book into the cold hearth, watching with a twisted expression of triumph as the pages curled into black ash. The words, Mom's last witness, were gone in a cloud of gray smoke. "There," said Chloe, dusting off her hands as if she'd just finished a chore. "No diary, no evidence, just a crazy sister who can't accept that she's a loser. Now, Mike, get the sledgehammer. I want that kitchen wall gone by noon." She looked at me, her eyes dancing with spite. "You have 10 minutes to grab your suitcase, Erica, or I'm calling the police to have you trespassed." I stood there, staring at the charred remains of the only thing I had left. My heart felt like it had been hollowed out with a rusted spoon. I had lost. The first blow of the sledgehammer hit the kitchen wall with a bone-jarring thwack. Dust billowed into the hallway, coating the floor in a fine white powder that looked like snow. Every strike felt like it was hitting me directly in the chest. Chloe stood in the center of the living room, her arms crossed, a look of pure, unadulterated satisfaction on her face. She was watching my world crumble, and she was enjoying it. "That's it, Mike!" she shouted over the noise. "Take it all down!" I stood by the front door, my small suitcase at my feet, feeling smaller than I had in my life. I had the bank statements in my bag, the paper trail, but without Mom's diary to explain the intent, to prove she hadn't given that money willingly, it was just a pile of numbers. Chloe's lawyers would bury me in minutes. Suddenly, my phone vibrated in my pocket. The screen showed a number I recognized, Sterling and Associates. "Hello?" I said, my voice barely a whisper against the crashing sounds of the demolition. "Miss Watson." Mr. Sterling's voice was as dry and cool as a cellar. "I need you and your sister back at my office, immediately." "Mr. Sterling, Chloe is literally tearing the house down as we speak. She has the inheritance. What else could there possibly be?" "There is a mandatory final verification clause," Sterling replied. His tone was different now, sharper, almost expectant. "The $15 million cannot be released to the investment accounts until a specific condition of the will is met in person. Tell your sister that if she is not here in 30 minutes, the funds will be frozen indefinitely." I looked at Chloe. She was pointing at the crown molding, gesturing for the contractor to rip it out. "Chloe!" I yelled. "Stop!" She turned, her face twisting into an angry scowl. "What now, Erica? I told you your time is—" "It's Sterling," I said, holding up the phone. "He says if you aren't at his office in 30 minutes, he's freezing the $15 million. There's a final verification clause." The change in her was instantaneous. The greed outweighed the malice. She didn't care about the house. She cared about the zeros in her bank account. "Mike, stop!" she screamed at the contractor. She grabbed her bag and shoved past me, her shoulder catching mine with a hard jolt. "Get in the car, Erica. If you say one word to screw this up, I will make sure you never work in this town again." I followed her out, my heart hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. As we pulled out of the driveway, I looked back at the house. A jagged hole was visible through the kitchen window, a raw wound in the place I had called home. Chloe drove like a woman possessed, weaving through traffic and cursing at red lights. She thought she was racing toward her fortune. I sat in the passenger seat, clutching my bag, wondering why Mr. Sterling's voice had sounded so much like a trap being sprung. The elevator ride up to Sterling's office felt like an eternity. Chloe wouldn't stop tapping her manicured nails against her leather clutch, a rapid staccato sound that grated on my nerves. She smelled of sweat and expensive perfume, a sour mix of anxiety and greed. "This is just a formality," she muttered, more to herself than to me. "A signature, a thumbprint, and then I'm done with you. I'm done with that house. I'm done with this pathetic town." I didn't answer. I was staring at my reflection in the brushed steel of the elevator doors. My hair was disheveled, my face pale, but my eyes, they looked different. The hopelessness was being replaced by a cold, hard curiosity. When we entered the office, Mr. Sterling was standing by the window. On his mahogany desk sat a large flat-screen monitor that hadn't been there before. Beside it was a silver laptop, its fan whirring softly. "Sit," Sterling said, not looking back. Chloe dropped into the chair, her legs crossing with a sharp snap. "Can we hurry this up? I have people waiting at the property. What is this final verification?" Mr. Sterling turned around. He looked older today, his eyes heavy with a weight I couldn't quite name. He didn't look at Chloe, he looked at me. "Your mother, Eleanor, was a very thorough woman, Miss Watson. She knew that money of this magnitude can bring out the best and the absolute worst in people." He picked up a remote control. "She recorded a video deposition 3 weeks before she passed. She made it a legal requirement of the will that both her daughters watch it together before a single cent is transferred." "A video?" Chloe scoffed, though I saw her grip her bag tighter. "I don't have time for a trip down memory lane. Just give me the papers." "The papers are contingent on the video, Miss Chloe," Sterling said firmly. He pressed a button. The monitor flickered to life. There was Mom. She was sitting in her favorite wingback chair, the one Chloe's contractor had probably just tossed into a dumpster. She looked frail, her skin like translucent parchment, but her eyes were sharp. They were the eyes of the woman who had raised us, not the woman who had died. "Hello, girls," Mom's voice came through the speakers, thin but steady. "If you're watching this, it means I'm gone, and the lawyers are ready to settle the score. Chloe, I know you're already spending the money in your head. You always were impatient." Chloe let out a forced, jagged laugh. "See, she knew me." "But," Mom continued, her image leaning closer to the camera, "I also know what you did while I was lying in that bed, too weak to stop you. I saw the bank notifications. I saw the loans you took without asking. I saw how you treated Erica like a servant while you bled me dry." Chloe's face drained of color. The smugness vanished, replaced by a frantic, darting look toward the door. "This is a setup," Chloe screamed, jumping to her feet. "I'm contesting this." "Sit down, Miss Watson," Sterling said, his voice like iron. "We haven't reached the legal instruction." Mom's image on the screen took a slow, labored breath. "Mr. Sterling has the forensic audit, he has the receipts, and most importantly, he has my final instruction." The screen went black for a second, then a single line of text appeared in white letters against the darkness. It was the clause that would change everything. The silence in the office was deafening, broken only by the frantic, ragged breathing coming from Chloe. She was staring at the black screen, her mouth hanging open, her skin the color of curdled milk. Mr. Sterling didn't look away from the monitor. He picked up a sheet of paper, a crisp white document with a gold seal, and cleared his throat. The sound was as sharp as a gavel. "Per the final codicil of Eleanor Watson's will," Sterling began, his voice echoing in the small room. The $15 million inheritance is subject to a specific adjustment. It is to be released to Chloe Watson in full, but only after the following condition is applied. He looked at Chloe, then back at the paper. Minus her prior thefts. The words hung in the air like a guillotine blade. Chloe froze. I felt the world tilt on its axis. "What?" Chloe whispered, the word barely a puff of air. "What does that mean? What thefts?" Mr. Sterling pulled a thick folder from his desk and slid it across the mahogany surface. It was filled with spreadsheets, highlighted bank statements, and copies of wire transfers. "Your mother spent the last 6 months of her life working with a forensic accountant. We tracked every dollar you moved from her trust into your personal accounts. We tracked the loans, the boutique shopping sprees, the New York penthouse down payment, and the forged signatures on her life insurance dividends." He tapped a final number at the bottom of the audit. "The total amount of unauthorized funds you took from your mother over the last 5 years comes to exactly $14,860,000. "No!" Chloe gasped, her hands flying to her throat. "No, she gave me that money. It was a gift." "The diary your sister found, which you so graciously destroyed this morning, was notarized and filmed as part of this deposition. Your mother stated clearly that none of those funds were gifts, they were thefts, and per the 4-word clause in the will, those thefts are to be deducted from your $15 million share before you see a single cent." Chloe scrambled for the calculator on the desk, her fingers shaking so violently she could barely hit the buttons. I watched as she realized the math. 15 million minus 14.8 million. That's only $140,000, she stammered, a hysterical edge creeping into her voice. "Actually," Sterling interrupted, "after we account for the capital gains taxes on the investments and the legal fees for the forensic audit, which the will also mandates you pay, the final balance for you, Chloe, is 0. "Zero?" Chloe's voice rose to a glass-shattering shriek. "0? I'm broke. I have bills. I have debts in the city. I have a contractor tearing down a house I don't—" "You don't own the house either," Sterling said, finally looking at her with a flicker of disgust, "because you are no longer the primary beneficiary of the residual estate. By attempting to take the funds through fraud, you triggered the bad faith clause." Chloe let out a sound that wasn't human, a raw, guttural scream of pure, unadulterated rage. She lunged at the desk, trying to grab the audit, but Sterling calmly moved it out of her reach. I sat there, my heart thumping against my ribs. The woman who had just tried to bulldoze my life was currently falling apart in front of me. She had nothing, no money, no house, and no dignity. "And Erica?" I asked, my voice finally finding its strength. Mr. Sterling turned to me, and for the first time he smiled. It was a small, tired smile, but it was real. "The remainder of the estate, the property, the recovered stolen funds, and the house reverts entirely to you, Erica. You're not just the caregiver anymore, you're the owner." The scream that tore from Chloe's throat was a sound I'll never forget. It wasn't a cry of grief. It was the sound of a spoiled child realizing the world no longer belongs to her. She lunged across the desk, her manicured nails clawing at the air toward Mr. Sterling's face. "You're lying! You're all in this together!" she shrieked. "That video is a deep fake! Erica paid you to do this!" Sterling didn't flinch. He simply pressed a button on his desk intercom. Within seconds, 2 uniformed men I hadn't noticed in the lobby stepped into the room. They weren't just security, they were process servers. "Chloe Watson,
one of them said, his voice a flat, professional drone. "You are being served with a summons for a grand jury investigation regarding multiple counts of wire fraud, elder abuse, and identity theft." He held out a thick envelope. Chloe looked at it as if it were a poisonous snake. She backed away, her heels catching on the carpet, until she hit the heavy mahogany door. "I'm not taking that," she hissed, her eyes darting between us like a trapped animal. "Erica, tell them it was all a mistake." I stood up slowly. For 5 years, I had been the one who took the hits. I had been the one who shrank so Chloe could shine. But as I looked at her, shaking, ruined, and exposed, I didn't feel the surge of pity I expected. I felt nothing, just the cold, clean weight of the truth. "You burned the evidence of Mom's love this morning, Chloe," I said, my voice steady and clear. "But you couldn't burn the truth. Mom saw you, and now the rest of the world is going to see you too." "You bitch!" she screamed, charging at me. The officers intercepted her before she could get close. As they led her out of the office, her heels scuffing uselessly against the floor, her designer bag fell, spilling expensive lipsticks and gold-plated cards across the rug. No one moved to pick them up. The office fell into a heavy, ringing silence. "She'll be tied up in litigation for years," Mr. Sterling said, exhaling a long breath. "The police have been waiting for this deposition to go public. They have everything they need." He handed me a heavy brass key, the key to the front door of the house. "Go home, Erica. The contractor has been informed. The demolition is over." I walked out of the building and into the crisp afternoon air. The sun was dipping low, painting the sky in bruises of purple and gold. I drove back to the house in a daze, my hands steady on the wheel for the first time in months. When I pulled into the driveway, the truck was gone. Mike, the contractor, was standing by his van, packing up his tools. He looked at me with a sheepish expression and tipped his hat. "Sorry about the wall, Miss Watson. I've got a crew coming tomorrow to patch it up on my dime. Your sister, well, she didn't mention she didn't have the deed." "It's okay, Mike," I said, looking up at the old Victorian. "We'll fix it." I walked inside. The house was quiet, the dust settling in the shafts of fading light. I walked through the kitchen, past the jagged hole in the wall, and up to the attic. The cedar chest was still there, sitting open and empty. I sat on the floor beside it and reached into the fireplace, pulling out a handful of gray ash, the remains of the diary. I let the wind from the attic window blow it away. Mom didn't leave me money. She left me my life back. She had known that the only way to save me was to let Chloe destroy herself. I leaned my head against the cool cedar wood and closed my eyes. For the first time in 5 years, I didn't have to worry about the next bill, the next debt, or the next betrayal. I was home. And this time, the silence didn't feel heavy. It felt like peace.